It's my pleasure to be here and talk about ServicePower. ServicePower is a great example of UK-EU original investment. It came out first of the mid-1990s with some very successful patents, or patents as we say in the US, and it developed into very robust software for the enterprise market. So what we'll talk about today is, even though how ServicePower and the software side has been around with the algorithms, what we call simulated annealing, especially for the scheduling product, the go-to-market and the vision of how we are attacking this ubiquitous field service industry is quite new to ServicePower. As Andy was kind enough to mention, I've been with the company since January 2013, 14 months as CEO. And there's a lot of dynamic change that's going on within ServicePower while still utilizing the very sound foundation of the products and excellent client relationships. So with that, let's go ahead and flip forward. There are some videos that will also be shared out by Equity Development that give you a better understanding of field service and the products, but I'll give a quick recap. Field service in general is the ubiquitous industry that most people don't think about, but actually keeps the world going round. It's the serviceman or woman that comes in to repair your home appliance, maybe your connected Nest device, perhaps your TV. They might come service the electrical generator for your car. They may be what keeps the cell phone tower or the utility power generation working, perhaps the oil and gas field, what have you. So field service already touches us in every way. And actually, ServicePower's clients already touch your life in every way in what we call the connected world. So ServicePower is really a master of what we consider the connected field service ecosystem. So that includes the companies that create the fixed asset that may be in your phone, in your home or a remote location. It also relates to the technician, of course, that needs to come do preventative maintenance or break fix or just check on that asset that's in a remote location. And then it also relates to the parts, the end-to-end monitoring and data, all the things we can do that also utilize value out of things like machine-to-machine, predictive intelligence, looking at propensity to failure, etc. And all that relates to what we started talking about in this last year I've been at ServicePower, taking what is a reactive model to a proactive model. And if you're curious about learning more about that, there's actually a very interesting Frost & Sullivan independent research report that you can look on our website about. So if we switch to the next slide quickly about ServicePower in more detail related to the products. You know, I've spent some time introducing the industry. Now let's talk about what ServicePower does for the products. So the heart of ServicePower is the scheduling engine. Okay, this is what came out of a lot of the technology investment that was done with the UK, EU. They actually have leading expertise in the sense of algorithms, a special algorithm called simulated annealing. We're also working within ServicePower to customize the algorithms of the future, algorithms that solve business problems, unique to industry verticals, etc. But already with our scheduling product, even though we have growth to do in the size of the company, we actually are the second largest in terms of number of users. So in the enterprise market, while there is a number of competitors, many of them are more focused on the SMB space. In the very dominant, sophisticated enterprise market, you have Click Software and ServicePower. These are the two artificial intelligence scheduling competitors that are in the market today. So that gives you a bit of frame of reference. And again, our focus is on complex businesses that have changing schedules during the day, have parts need, they may have emergency break fix, they'll be doing preventative maintenance, SLA management, all these very complex yet critical things we help clients do seamlessly and drive cost and productivity on top of it. We, of course, also do that in a mobile world. Mobility is something we've all known. Of course, most of us have had cell phones for a long time. We know about apps that get downloaded and ways of tracking things. Well, we specifically look at mobility for field service. So that means you're doing things like giving mobile techs the best way to get to a job. You're able to do status reporting. You're able to track parts inventory, facilitate doing invoicing in the home as a future thing, parts ordering, all these things. And mobility is something that we were able to add into ServicePower and launch with our first clients as our own product, last year in 2013. So that was a first major step with ServicePower, that we're now integrating mobility as what we call this connected services platform in a larger way, as I talked about before. Another very distinct differentiator for ServicePower, and one that is unique, say, to Quick Software that I mentioned, which is a scheduling company, is the third-party contractor management and also the warranty claims administration. So for example, in the U.S., we handle about the warranty claims validation and administration of about 60% of all appliances that are manufactured in the U.S. and about 70% of the insurance claims that get processed in the warranty claims, whether it's the consumer electronics or appliances space. So in the U.S., we have a very dominant position. We're also quite active in the U.K. We've taken a step further that much of this market doesn't use what's called branded service or employees like we would schedule in our scheduling products, but they actually use third-party services or contractors. So you do want the visibility. You want to make sure that you have the cost controls, you're tracking jobs completion, etc., and also the customer experience. So over time, it's really of robust value for us at ServicePower to be able to handle what's called hybrid workforces or combined workforces. And this is also critical when you look at the evolution of machine-to-machine, the connected world. A lot of these companies that are rolling out connected strategies in the marketplace don't necessarily have their own field service organization. So we know that they will need that, and that's why ServicePower is positioning our connected services platform to meet the demands of the industry as it moves into this connected world, which is a great opportunity for the company. So just quickly, if you look at page 4 of 7, this gives an idea of some of the competitive advantage points that are unique to ServicePower. I won't go through them all at once because I've talked about some of them. But as you can see, there's actually really robust and significant positioning points that differentiate ServicePower. So the core products, the core client relationships are very strong. What we've been working on and what we continue to work on is the brand awareness of ServicePower, right? So we want to be more prominent in the eyes of industry buyers. That, of course, means that we need to be ranked in more prominent positions with the major trade analysts, and this is something we've been working on very diligently over the last year. It means that we're improving digital marketing techniques, SEO rankings, go-to-markets as well. We're also, of course, improving lead generation, lead qualification, those activities that go with it, and expanding the sales force. This is all normal. So the good news is ServicePower has a lot of strength in the products. We have a lot of strength in the people and some real competitive advantages that we can leverage in an increasingly global market. We're now at the position where we've grown to about 9 countries, and so far in 2014. By 2015, by the end of 2015, we should probably be in close to 20 countries. And actually, with the client relationships that we already have today, if you look into 2016, we should be in 25 to 30 countries. So that'll be quite exciting. In the next slide, page 5 of 7 and page 6 of 7, this is where I'll talk a little bit about where ServicePower is and the transitions we've made in the last few years, and then where we'll continue to go. These are more illustrative as I talk through some of the growth trends in the segments of the business and where we're targeting. So the service operations side, which ties in with the third-party contract management product I mentioned, the warranty claims administration, has grown very strongly. We've been able to add a number of very key manufacturer and retailer clients over the last year. So we'll continue leveraging the service operations growth in the years to come. It's a very stable, profitable, and good revenue segment for us. Where we want to continue generating increased momentum is expanding out the opportunity for what we call the connected services group or the scheduling and mobile group. So that's where, when you look to future periods, we're positioning in terms of technology investment, go-to-market strategies, the sales team, etc., that we can actually grow in a global marketplace much faster and to a larger degree, especially the service scheduling segment of the business. The good news is that as we do that, we will be able to increasingly and organically generate cash. So one of the trends that we're also working with in the business is we'll continue to offer flexible business models and pricing models where some clients, especially the large clients, may always find a lower total cost of ownership of going with the perpetual license model, where they pay up front, they get the license revenue, and then they have a support and maintenance following up. However, we all know, or those of us who follow software, that software as a service gives us the recurring revenue benefits as well as spreading the revenue over a longer period of time. Even though ServicePower already has approximately 80 to 90% recurring revenue and has 100% client retention, we are in the process of migrating as a company from doing more clients contracting as a perpetual license basis to contracting on a SaaS basis. And that's where in 2014 we've really prioritized doing SaaS contracts in the early part of the year. We do, of course, entertain license opportunities and have a variety of those as well. But the SaaS, building out the SaaS revenue for ServicePower, especially in the scheduling segment, is a high priority for us as a business. So if you look a little bit at page 7, these are example client lists. We have actually an amazing client list, I venture to say, for our size of company. We probably have some of the most impressive client lists you'd see. These are only a broad example of the clients, of course, not an exclusive list. But I think you'll also agree when you look at page 7, the client success of ServicePower is one that we can certainly leverage as we move forward with the increased brand awareness that I've already talked about. So let's talk in a little bit more detail about the market and products. And again, this is meant to be illustrative. There'll be some questions and, of course, a great deal of detail that people that follow the field service industry might be interested in, but this will give you an idea overall. So if you look at a way of looking at the market segmentation, I've already talked a little bit about software companies that focus more, say, in the SMB, the small and medium-sized businesses. While ServicePower certainly does sell in the SMB segment, because of the robustness and the nature of our software and the development, we're very strong in the larger enterprise cycle. I've already talked about that. But if you break it down, not by size, but looking at the type of software verticals, you do see a clustering of what's called mobile workforce management. So that actually encompasses quite a wide spectrum of how you manage contract execution in the field. Right, and there you have schedule optimization. As I mentioned, the basics of schedule optimization is moving first from paper to technology. Okay, the basic first step may only be taking a paper schedule and sticking it on a device. Okay, that's pretty basic, but at least then you're using technology rather than paper. The next stage is looking at using, say, Google Maps or other sort of ordering of jobs, or some drag and drop technology to give you some more flexibility on how you order jobs. Then there are various levels of sophistication that ultimately lead you to the level of sophistication of service scheduling, where you're doing very high-level intraday optimization. The way the Monte Carlo simulation, kind of similar of simulated annealing, works is that you're taking all the constraints and the parameters of a business, of the workflow, of the technician's skills, of the parts availability, etc. And the optimizer technology is running over and over and over to give you the very best schedule. But it's looking at it in a way that it will move jobs, it'll change things. It's continually looking at how it can bring forward preventative maintenance, push out preventative maintenance, prioritize things by SLAs. There's very, very, very few software companies that can do optimization to that level, and that's where we at ServicePower are positioning more and more our optimization product as the anchor product in this mobile workforce management. You, of course, have also broader field service management. So in the broader field service management, there may be some names I'll mention that you've heard of, right? I mean, you may have heard of ServiceMax, right? That's a company. You may have also heard of companies that are more contact center. A great product that I saw recently well, it's a great product that's been around, but the latest innovations I saw recently at the last Dreamforce is Salesforce's Service Cloud, right? That's a fantastic contact center product that's actually evolving in wider ways to be a broader potential, management tool for companies. So it's very interesting looking at how that and CRM especially would be relevant to ServicePower and how we complement that. And then, of course, you have mobility. We at ServicePower, of course, have a mobility solution that is totally integral to how we go to market, but you also have a number of standalone mobility players. So looking forward, when we talked about a migration more from, say, a product and especially a license model to continuing to software as a service or a SaaS model, one of the things you also look from a product architecture structure is configuring your product from something that only can be sold one way to something that can be sold many ways. And that means making it modular, because businesses have different needs, right? And their needs may change over time. So you may sell them something that in a year they need something different or more or what have you. So that's where, as part of ServicePower, when you look at our technology roadmap, not only are we evolving in the general industry trends, we're adding feature functionality all the time, but we're also working to make our technology more modular so that we're really much more precise in giving clients what they need only when they need. So that's a really important thing for a very responsive software company. I've talked a little bit about machine to machine. This is a great opportunity. We've actually been doing it within ServicePower for approximately 5 years with looking at monitoring to trigger service. And what's unique, M2M, machine to machine in general, the Internet of Things, we know it as more the sensors that are installed and the connectivity around that. How it matters to ServicePower is that if you have sensors or you have a sensor with an alert of some sort, you need to trigger action. So a lot of companies have the monitoring capabilities, they have the sensor capabilities, but if there is an issue, what do they do about it? They don't. And that's what the opportunity is for ServicePower, because we can take the out-of-parameter alert automatically. Sometimes we'll have parts fault information, sometimes not, but then we can triage and act on it. And that is huge, because most of the companies that are driving M2M, Internet of Things, connected world don't have field service arms. So this is a huge opportunity, which of course is enabled by our great software here at ServicePower. And it also enables companies that already know about field service to move from a reactive to a proactive model, that they can start looking at not how they just optimize productivity, but actually how they start fundamentally changing their business models, that they actually do preventative maintenance not just on a fixed schedule, but timing it to prevent failure or the need to come do an emergency SLA fix or a break fix. We call this conditional scheduling, and this is really the way of the future and why ServicePower is special when you look at machine-to-machine and Internet of Things. So in terms of client ROI, these are example figures. When we sell our products, we sell them on value. Our products are not a commodity. They're really tailored to customers' pain points, how we make their business model work more effectively, how we facilitate their business processes to drive customer experience, cost controls, productivity, all these things that businesses and their customers really care about. So when we do pricing in general, we're always looking at, okay, yes, of course we have list pricing, et cetera, but we really tailor that to what is the real benefit the customer is getting from our software. Are they getting an extra job per day, 2 jobs per week? Are we helping them to optimize parts inventory and labor sizes? Are we helping them to move from only having a contracted or an employed labor force to doing a mix and getting the efficiencies of that? What can we help to drive that additional productivity, cost-saving, go-to-market capabilities for our customers? And that's also what I personally love about ServicePower, is not only are we enabling the brand performance of our customers, we're making their customers' life easier. We all know a case where, maybe, Thanksgiving is coming up in America, so you certainly don't want your oven breaking right when you have to do your Thanksgiving turkey, right? But, this is where should that happen, we want to make sure that a client has ServicePower so they could get somebody out there right away and fix your oven before Thanksgiving. That's a bit of a simplistic example, but that's an example of when you do that well, you are making a difference in people's lives. On a more realistic case or a more health-conscious case, we're also doing a lot of things about monitoring of whether it's smart boilers or other things for at-risk communities. If you have an elderly aunt who's living, say, in northern Scotland, you certainly don't want the boilers to stop working when you have the 2 coldest weeks of the year. So this is where, it seems as if sometimes field service is remote, but actually field service is very, very close to all the aspects of our daily lives. And that's why it's really an interesting industry to pay attention to and one with a great deal of potential. So let's talk about go-to-market progress, because if you look at any place that ServicePower had to perform better and will continue to perform better, it's in the go-to-market. So there, one of the first things we've had to do, and we've made great progress with the help of my very talented marketing team that we have here at ServicePower that has really galvanized and worked so hard over the last year to grow our brand awareness. For a while, even though ServicePower had great software, it didn't necessarily have the brand awareness in the field service market. So this is where we're coming back very strong. And actually, we're in leaps and bounds. We're growing the brand awareness. We have some really great analyst recognition, some new things we can announce soon, and that's continue. We also have started digital marketing, things like making sure that we show up on the Google search rankings, that we're targeting email campaigns. This webinar is an example. Also doing industry-related webinars, attending more trade shows, all these sort of things that help enterprise clients know about ServicePower. And part of that, of course, is software sales. If you look at go-to-market page 204, I've already talked a lot about how we sell and the nature of how we sell, so I won't go too much into that. But if you look at the software sales, obviously we have different models for that. We try to be very flexible in order to meet the client's targets for total cost of ownership, as well as what's the best methodology or what suits their budget best. That's one of the things ServicePower tries to be very flexible and customer friendly in that. And then, of course, our analytics business intelligence is fundamental and indelible with how we go to market. You can only do predictive intelligence and optimize first-time fix and move from a reactive to a proactive model if you're good with analytics. And we also have some very, very talented people that understand the industry, they understand analytics, big data, and what we could do with that. So we're commercializing that more and more with our large clients, where obviously, even 1 point improvement can be millions of dollars. So moving on, if you look at go-to-market, again, I've taken out the numbers since this is a public webinar, but our pipeline growth has been very significant, and it will continue to grow. So we're also targeting not only increased lead generation activities, which of course are marketing, but also as a company, lead qualification activities, because we're looking at the clients, of course, that need our services. When I talked about the market segmentation, if you have mobile workforce management and you need real optimization, you have to look at ServicePower, right? If you are doing warranty claims management or third-party contract or servicers management, you have to use ServicePower, or at least look at ServicePower. And then mobility, we have a great HTML5. It works across all devices, all operating system, and it's tailored for field service. It's not something that someone has tried to make fit. No, we have a field service recognized product for mobility that will suit your industry needs. So that's all very exciting. And again, most of the focus that we're making in these activities are really growing how we go to market in this connected services platform area, which really focuses on the strength of our scheduling platform and product. So moving on, again, if you look at page 4-4, again, broadly, obviously we're also looking at sales. We have a number of recruitment contracts now where we are bringing in lead qualification, salespeople. It's really exciting, right? And that's where, if you look at how we've increased the brand awareness, et cetera, we've also been updating talent. When you look at sales as well, a lot of the salespeople that we have, also as we grow globally, that impacts the sales organization. So it's all very exciting. Well, about 5 minutes left, so we have the outlook, so you can obviously read that. I've touched on all of these points. While we are, I would say, about halfway through the agenda of what I would like to see ServicePower do as we go into, say, 2015 and much of the activities there. Since we have about 5 minutes left, I will transition over to questions. So with that, Andy, maybe give me a few questions.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Quite a few have come in already, and I would remind the audience just to submit any by email. Where should we start? Rashid is curious about how excited you are the potential benefits that might come to ServicePower that arise out of the GE appliances sale to Electrolux.
So this is actually a fantastic question because we do software for both. So we have both General Electric and Electrolux as a client. General Electric has been actually one of our clients maybe 10 years now, a very long-standing client. Electrolux is a new, quite exciting client win that we've launched with them this year. So the opportunities that come out of that not only is to expand our product reach, but it's really to look at what we can do on how we improve a very large business. With the U.S., that's a very large market for both of them. They have very strong dominant position. Whirlpool is, I think, the only other company about their size. And with that, we'll have enough of a market base to really look at predictive intelligence. These manufacturers are already very active and very clever in how they utilize fault information to drive manufacturing gains in the factories. But we're going to look at how we can use predictive intelligence around optimizing the repair break-fix process, as well as in this segment, the aftermarket work is really interesting. How to sell more extended warranties, do the charge on delivery, the cash work post a warranty period. And for that, customer experience is huge, which is where ServicePower comes in. If you have a technician that shows up at the right time a customer expects with the right part and you can do first-time fix, that's a customer that wants to do more work. So we're very happy to help GE and Electrolux not only combine their businesses, but continue growing.
Okay, thank you, very clear. Quite a few questions on competition. Adrian is curious. Well, he's sure that you have a feel for how many times you have won tenders in 2014 when you've been competing with the likes of TOA and Click. How does that compare to, say, last year? And he's also quite curious, given the focus you have on partner relationships, whether tenders are in fact the most important bellwether, or in fact you should be hoping to win exclusive contracts because of relationships beforehand.
So that's actually a great question, a lot of touching. So obviously, the more you can do with positioning your product such that you are unique and don't have to go to tender, that's a great thing. Okay, and we do quite a bit of that, and because we have a lot of unique things we can do at ServicePower. But when you're dealing with large organizations that have formalized procurement process, many of them go through tender. Even if they maybe don't want to go through tender, by their processes, they have to go through tender. So we are active in a great number more tenders this year than we were last year, right? And we're starting to get invited to tenders rather than having to go find the tenders. So that's also a positive step. So we have been able to win against TOA a number of times, as well as Click. We're continuing. So it's not to say that we'll win every time, because of course that doesn't happen. But when I talked about positioning our technology, especially the technology that we can do to facilitate intraday optimization and what have you, that's been a very strong positioning point against TOA. But there's also things that we can learn. TOA is very good at marketing and making the product seem easy to use. So those are lessons that we've been exposed to and I've listened to as part of these processes that we're going to bring into ServicePower. Because I always think that the most interesting is to learn from your competitors. Click as well. Click has been very successful growing. At the time, back in 2008, 2009, ServicePower and Click were approximately the same size. So, I went to learn from Click's success in growing, how they've gone to market, especially in oil and gas and utilities, and go after them. So, I'm definitely not too arrogant to learn from my competitors, but we also certainly are performing well in RFPs and will continue to do so. In terms of partners, partners aren't necessarily so much a reflection of RFPs. They can be, but not necessarily. But where they are really interesting is if you compare ServicePower to others in the industry, most others in the industry are getting about 50% of their referrals, maybe also their qualified leads, from partners. Click has a well-known relationship with SAP that's benefited them greatly. Obviously, TOA just has been working with Oracle, just got bought by Oracle, or in the closing process of that acquisition. So for us at ServicePower and me as CEO, as we've been able to increase our brand awareness, as we've been able to get some traction also in the global marketplace, I'm leveraging that, of course, to get more discussions with partners or to get the attention of the larger partners. So that's important for me as CEO. And when we do get those partner relationships, then of course we need to commercialize them, and that will have a very strong impact in future periods. Because if I can get 50% of say, deals from a partner, obviously that's 50% I don't have today, which would be very exciting also for shareholders.
Right, and perhaps just following on from that and looking specifically at Click Software, Bill is curious. The results seem okay, but they have had top-level management changes recently. Is there a particular opportunity for you to pursue their clients and market share and indeed hire some of their better staff?
I hope so. So we actually have hired a few people that had been at, say, intervening companies. So there's a few people that have joined us in the last year that had been part of Click's very rapid growth, but had gone to a company in between. So, we also are hiring someone who had been part of TOA's growth. So, this is where I'm very pragmatic about obviously promoting and utilizing the great skills that we have in the company, but also looking at our competitors for source of talent should the opportunity arise.
Okay. And a couple of questions on international growth. At the moment, it appears to Michael that many of your customers only use your products in one or two countries, despite your global or growing global capability. What do you think is the main blockage to that, and will it change?
Oh, it will change. But again, remember, I've only been here 14 months, and an enterprise sales cycle is at least 12 months, right? So at least for the very large deals. Smaller deals are faster. So assuming that after you get promoted, you do have some time to assess the business, etc. If you assume that after a couple quarters I have an idea what we need to address, and then we're very responsive, that puts us to early 2015, right? Just doing the math. So, in terms of global, we just announced our first global deal as a multinational deal. We're also in the process of rolling out country by country with a number of clients. And then we do, of course, have a number of pipeline deals that are global in nature. So there, a lot of the pace of global deployment not only relates to, say, how you can implement, how you can win and then implement, but also language translation. So the pace at which we can go into some of the markets, especially, say, China or Middle East, where you may have Arabic or Asian character sets and you're not able to launch in English, obviously we need to make sure that the software would meet the client's needs in what their capabilities are required for translation, travel. There's some interesting things, too, in terms of mapping. One of the differentiators of our scheduling product is that it does in-memory travel routing, and it's very, very precise. So much more sophisticated than, say, a simple Google Maps. It creates a travel matrix. But to do that in certain countries around the world, you need to be able to use lat-log, or latitude, longitude, or other mechanisms, because postal codes or other addresses might not be precise enough. So that's where, to have a superior product, which is really what ServicePower wants to have with these large enterprises, we need to be thinking about those things. If you don't have precise enough directional data from, say, like, a common travel map, how do we create lat-log? How do we make, matrices? And then also, like, for example, utility client, we can peg a lat-log site for a tower or something. But that's not good enough. You also have to think about, how do I access that? If it's a remote oil field, drilling rig in the mountains somewhere, or it's a utility pole, you need to be thinking about, how do I get there? Like, where are my entry points, et cetera, not just where the asset is. So there's some really interesting things that we're working on that will differentiate us also from that side, not just moving the technician and the part, but also thinking about how we really use travel time and travel optimization as a key differentiator.
Okay, thank you. And again, a little extension of that. In terms of your growth from being active in 9 countries to 20 countries and then hopefully 25, could that quite easily be achieved without actually winning any new clients in those countries because of your contacts with multinationals?
Exactly. So good question, whoever asked that. So most of my career personally has been outside America, although, from my accent, you all know that I am American. So what I've learned is, if you are a very large, dominant brand, creating an agency office, an office in Singapore, one maybe in Dubai, one in Latin America, etc., you can drive business off the power of your brand. In general, when you are in an evolving industry or you're building out your brand and getting more recognition like ServicePower is, it's much more cost efficient, because again, we're a public company and we care about profits and costs, to grow on the backs of multinational companies. So as we build out the capabilities with existing clients and we get, say, a beachhead, we get the language, the travel routing, we have a beachhead, actual use cases, information about that local market, then we'll start selling to other companies that are in that local market. So for example, if we're in Mexico and Brazil, or Germany, France, Netherlands, obviously then you can start targeting other companies that have field service or related needs in those countries. But again, the most efficient and most cost-effective way of growing globally is on the backs of existing client relationships or clients that you have won maybe for one country, and then you're validating a return on investment that then you apply to other countries.
Thank you. And again, a follow-on with a very logical flow of information here. But in terms of looking after these multinational clients, well, clearly the role of account management is as important, if not more important, than sales. So Ian is just curious whether that already exists within the group, given the quite domiciliary nature of client relationships at the moment, or is that where you're looking to hire?
So we have actually created account management, within the last few years, and that has definitely had a lot of success. To be fair, you always have a scale. So account management is critical. There's no argument about that. How you provide account management, of course, depends on the number of clients in a geography and also the orientation, right? I mean, there are some salespeople, I think, that do a great job of account management. There's others that don't want to deal with the day-to-day of following up on support requests, coordinating upgrades, etc. So that's where, we're going to be evolving, actually, our professional services group to do more change management, business process management, as well as looking at some of the day-to-day aspects of account management. So over time, we will further refine how we do account management in terms of the functions that we provide for clients. We, of course, already are 24/7 on our support infrastructure. We're looking also to additional relationships that we could leverage with global companies that, especially for the more further-flung geographies, they would have local presence and what have you. And again, as we evolve in account management, as we evolve with the clients, we'll also evolve in account management. So if we get enough presence in the other continents, whether it's Asia, Latin America, Middle East, what have you, not only will you be coordinating sales activities, but you'll be coordinating account management, professional services, and support activities. So that'll all be part of the evolution of ServicePower, and we look forward to all that happening.
Okay, right. Last couple of questions. You placed great stress in your presentation on preventative service, and of course earlier in the year there was a significant agreement reached with Bosch. Is this an area where we might hope to see similar deals, and do you regard this as a differentiator for your group?
Oh, for sure. So I always say that you have, say, a lifestyle or a life cycle, with clients, right? So you'll have some clients, especially in certain organizations or industries, that may be, say, on the early part of maturing in terms of software for these purposes. So they may be looking at their first system, they may be looking at, they've outgrown a homegrown system, and they just want to start driving more jobs per day, productivity, first-time fix, okay? Then you'll have other clients that have either grown in size or grown in complexity that'll have different needs. But the holy grail in terms of where it gets most interesting, especially for these larger multinationals, is really how you tie together the predictive intelligence regarding propensity to failure of parts or an asset, and then preventing that failure. And that's where the Bosch solution is very good in terms of the triage logic and all the accoutrements, if you will, around that. Of course, we're agnostic. We can take sensor feeds from any machine-to-machine sensor or system, and any company we can work with. But what's interesting is with the preventative maintenance, one of the differentiators for ServicePower already is that many of the software competitors, to give you a framework, only are really designed in their structure of software for repairing or doing preventative maintenance. The first step, which is unusual, and that's also a differentiator for us at ServicePower with some others, is that we can manage the workflow and optimize both break fix, repair, as well as preventative maintenance. So that's step one. And then when you think about what you can do to either anticipate failure or to do preventative maintenance, that, you know, if you have a one-year cycle on preventative maintenance, but for example, you have an elevator that's actually having increased usage, you want to know that so you can come in at maybe the 10-month mark, do the elevator service, and avoid a lengthy breakdown. So that's where it gets really interesting, especially as you look at the evolving enterprise business model. So we have a client that, you know, is paid on, you know, uptime, right? SLAs is related to uptime. Or they may be paid based on product flow, right? So if you're paid based on the quantity of something that's dispensed, you don't want anything to prevent that product being dispensed, right? So this is where, you know, all these models, by doing field service more proactively with preventative aspects to prevent the breakdowns or the out of usage, that's where it gets really interesting. And it also pragmatically gives you more flexibility. One of the things our software is good at is, you know, say I need to come to this building to repair something. Well, our software can automatically look for what might be in a preventative maintenance window nearby. Right? So maybe the building across the street from a facility management industry perspective, I may have a preventative maintenance visit scheduled next week. Well, it's much more cost efficient if I'm the technician coming to this building to do a service, that I go do that preventative maintenance visit next week for two reasons. One, I've already driven here. Two, I'm already here. And three, that frees up space next week that I can maybe do an emergency fix or I can do something else. Right? So that's where you really get interesting in how you can partner with enterprises and do really valuable stuff. Of course, we'll also have a lot of clients that are earlier in the, you know, maturity process. But there, you know, we'll put in the system they need, and we'll be the partner as they evolve. You know, we have many clients that have been with us, you know, 8, 9, 10 years. We want all of our new clients to want to be with us 8, 9, 10 years going forward as well.
Great. I think one last question, which I'll take in a positive light, comes in from Brian, and it's about your share register at the moment. He says you're not the easiest share to deal in. Could you just outline who the largest shareholders are at the moment, and also, as much as you can guess or speak for other people, whether you think there might be a supply of stock from potentially former directors should the share price appreciate?
So, you know, this we get into, if you will, life as a CEO of a public company, right? So we have really great institutional investors. Katie Potts at Herald has 15%. She's been in the company now for a number of years. She's a very experienced, and the whole team there at Herald, very experienced software investors. They're at the top of their range in ServicePower, but they are great institutional shareholders to have. Hargrave Hale has come in. You can see publicly, I think they're about 7% off of memory. They've actually picked up a number of stock in the last year. They've probably been the biggest mover in the last year. They're also a great institutional investor. Legal & General has been very loyal and stable. We have a number of other shareholders that have been actually with ServicePower for a long time. And then we do have quite a bit of activity. So, you know, obviously, I want to see the market cap grow. I want to see the investments that we're making, the new client wins, come back and benefit the shareholders. To be, you know, frank speaking about it, of course, there is some education and evolution we need to make. Whenever you have a historical company and in some cases a historical share register, you need to be realistic about that, right? So, you know, we need to make sure that we're driving demand not only for the appreciation of the holdings of the shareholders that are in, but we're also developing the liquidity and the interest in the stock going forward. So that should people that, you know, for no reason personal to ServicePower be at the expiration of their fund or be at a maturity level where they want to swap some shares or make some changes in their portfolio, they, of course, can have the liquidity with overall a growing market cap and a growing stock price. So as we work to deliver this year, also going into 2015, a lot of the strategic things that we're talking about, ultimately from a shareholder perspective, it not only should result in growing the market cap from a company perspective, but it should also, of course, grow the value of the holding of shareholders who choose to stay in ServicePower, and also facilitate more liquidity over the next few years.
Okay, very, very last question, just coming from you, and again looking at the future, where commentators are forecasting good growth in 2015, 2016, and move to profit and increasing cash reserves. Are there situations where you might foresee the need for additional funding in the next year? Is this just an organic story? And what would be your preferred method of financing, subject to market conditions at the time?
Well, the last part about, yeah, exactly. So the preferred method of financing, okay, I mean, that's too premature to look at this point. But, you know, when you look at the go-to-market, you have to remember, you're never a company, say, in isolation. You always have lots of things going on, right? Part of what ServicePower is doing is investing in how we look to the industry 5 years from now. Part of what ServicePower is doing today is looking at the feature functionality and go-to-market in different industry verticals, which relates to some development. Part of what ServicePower is doing is really looking at how we deepen the integration in our connected services platform, right? We also are evolving to more of a SaaS model. So broadly speaking, I always think if you look at pricing, you may get from a license model 50% today as a perpetual license, what you might get under a SaaS contract over 3 years. That's partly why investors prize SaaS contracts, because not only are they recurring revenue, which of course support and maintenance revenue is also recurring revenue, but you usually end up earning more on a SaaS contract over time than you do, you know, we all know the discounts for, you know, real-time money and this and that. So this is where, within ServicePower, if we focus, say, solely on license deals, maybe we could even grow faster, but that might not be the best and isn't the best decision if you want to grow SaaS revenues, recurring revenues, stable profitability, and obviously the trading multiples as well. So this is where there's a balance. You know, some things are, say, more in our control regarding strategy. Of course, other things are less in our control because, you know, we do want to be sensitive and flexible with how clients want to purchase. Some clients are increasingly mandating SaaS contracts. Other very large clients, if they have the cash, do want to take, say, the discount of doing a perpetual license up front. So in the end, I want these new clients. I want to be flexible, but I do want to have an idea of how we continue growing the recurring revenues and the profitability of ServicePower. And the day that we start the year in a profit will be the day on January 2nd I pop the bottle of champagne, because that's ultimately when we will have transformed ServicePower in a way that matters to investors.